The brain with its internal activities actually does two different major tasks. First is communication, internal communication here, and second is recording of the communications. Uh, uh, Human brains difference with the other previous species is making more detailed recording of the communications as well as recalling them and utilizing those recalls in the more effective communications. So by making long-term memory motifs, which are small memories, uh, it enables human to integrate them in more complicated thoughts. It means that both memory making of those detailed information as well as recalling them is very important, and this video is actually an introduction that what happens in one neural assembly in one small segments or an neural column or the cortex. What happens over there that a unit of the communication and recording will be uh, split over there. So the next video will be more easy to understand if we just uh, pay attention more to this short video. What makes a human different from other mammalian species? Actually, the more detailed and fine the memory buildings, and of course utilizing of them in thought generations are the main factor that improve the cognition skills of the human and makes his brain more effective. Here we see a very small segment of such the horizontal communication and the vertical activation in very small segment of the cortex column, as already mentioned. Horizontal communication is just receive the information from individual assembly and integrate them in a thought or in a memory recall or in a dream in the simplest way. But in the vertical oscillation in a cortex column normally happens because of the inputs coming from communication or exchange of energy with the limbic system or brain stem or with the cerebral cortex. In any way, this horizontal integration will be accelerated when this vertical communication are more synchronized and more precise and in smaller sizes. In the cortex and specifically in the cortex columns or neural assemblies, there are a variety of the neurons, but the dominant neurons are from two main types, uh, pyramidal neurons and granular neurons. Pyramidal neurons are the long neurons which normally communicate vertically between the cortex currents, and granular are those which communicate mostly in horizontal direction between the different neural columns or different neural assemblies, the assemblies that activate and fire together either to recall the information encoded on the inner layers or to combine the recalled ones to generate a thought or a dream or recall of a complete memory. In of course in the sleep times, those strain residuals that are confined within the neural assemblies again vertically will be imposed to the inner layers to consolidate a new information unit, as we refer them to a memory. New discoveries in MIT actually shows that the distribution of the ion channels, which are media for connections between neurons or neural connectivity within the neural assemblies. These the population of them, when the size of the neuron increases, the number of the ion channels will increase in we can say all of or most of the mammals. However, in human, it is discovered that doesn't follow the same regulation, and here in brain kinematics, based on the same discovery, it is assumed that the number of the ion channels which facilitate the horizontal communication between the different neural assemblies increases and accelerate the joining of the information to generate the big piece of the thought or big piece of the information. But in in the pyramidal neurons, in the inner layers, reverse to other species, number of the ion channels will decreases, and it means that the pumping of the ions from inside cell to outside will be somehow blocked, but from those ion channels which are not blocked, the output are more strong and powerful. The output of pumping ions from the cells are more strong, and this strange and powerfulness is the source for reconfiguration of the connectivity in the inner layers, layers of 5 and 6, which they host or accommodate the memory units. Here again in this slide we see that how the ion channels in outer cortex increase the kinematics energy of the strain carrier waves, but increases the potential strain energy in the uh, inner cortex layers, and this uh, uh, higher potential is enough powerful to reconfigure connectivity and encode new information, or as we call or refer to them, memory motifs or memory units. Up to now, we compared the pyramid neurons in the vertical direction within neural assembly. Uh, they just conduct the signals or electrical parts vertically, and the granular neurons just conduct between the neural assemblies in horizontal direction. But in the subject of the brain kinematics, we are not working with the single neurons or few numbers of them, but more about thousands of the neurons which are connected in a location together and made groups of the column. They activate together, and the energy that either horizontally conduct or vertically transfer uh, is much more than single neurons. Uh, in vertical direction, when it goes from the inner information by its strain carrier, strain package which carries that information. Recall is the subject of transferring from inner layers toward the outer layers. However, for the memory building, the direction is reversed from the upper or outer layers toward the inner layers, and will be encoded in the layers 5 and 6 especially. As we discussed before, memories are consolidated in inner cortex layers, and outer layers of the cortex have more flexible connectivity, and when they are exposed to the wave of the strain carrier energy, will deform. This deformation, temporal deformation, is needed to find a similar geometry or configuration with the inner connectivity, inner layer connectivity, which are more rigid and fixed. When such a resonation happens, then the information either transfers upward to integrate in the tau generation, or downwards to make a memory unit encoding a new information. Again, in this slide, we are summarizing the other explained slides that in each neural assembly, the synchronized firing of the granule neurons will transfer or travel the information which is encoded in the same assembly to the strain carrier wave to integrate with the information being carried by that wave to generate tau. But in the same time, it imposes some strains toward the inner cortex layers in the assembly to modify the memory over there. There is three possibilities. One, to give birth to a new memory or encode new information, or to strengthen the information already is there if the traveling component through the outer layer is contiguous in the configuration with the memory in the assembly, or could also erase the memory over there or weaken that if there is too much conflict between the short-term or working memory component which traveling and trap on the assembly with the encoded information in the inner layer. If there is too much conflict in between, it either configure the connectivity in full, or can weaken the previous consolidated connectivity. As already explained, this video is just an introduction to the next video 11-1 to understand the interaction between the short-term and working memories with long-term memory motifs or long-term memory structure or the cortex as the principle of the kinematics of the brain activities that explains how thoughts are generated, dreams are generated, or a full memory will be recalled. This was a description for a very tiny segment of the cortex, However, in the next one, we'll see that how stream bundles and stream bits of the long-term memories, they affect each other and integrate a full thought or a full memory or the a generated dream.